Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she raised her trembling hand, offering her entire life savings for the pregnant mare everyone else had condemned to slaughter. Neither the desperate girl nor the frightened horse could know that this single moment would unearth family secrets buried for 15 years and heal wounds that had destroyed 2 families. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The summer sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty auction grounds of Willow Creek Ranch. The air was thick with the scent of hay, leather, and the nervous sweat of animals awaiting their fate. Among the crowd of wealthy ranchers, horse trainers, and casual spectators, 15-year-old Emma Thompson stood quietly in the shadows of the viewing stalls, her worn boots and faded jeans marking her as someone who didn't belong among the prosperous buyers. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her sun-kissed face bore no makeup, just a scattering of freckles across her nose. Emma wasn't supposed to be here. Her father, who worked as a stable hand at the neighboring ranch, would be furious if he knew she had sneaked away from her chores. But something had drawn her to the auction today, a feeling she couldn't explain, a whisper in her heart that she needed to be here. At the far end of the stables, away from the prize thoroughbreds and champion quarter horses that would fetch thousands of dollars, stood a chestnut mare with a white blaze running down her face. Unlike the other horses who paced nervously or stood proudly for potential buyers, this mare stood with her head hanging low, her once beautiful coat dull, and her eyes lacking the spark of life. But what made her different? What made the wealthy buyers pass her stall with barely a glance was her swollen belly heavy with foal. "That one's not worth your time," a deep voice said, startling Emma from her thoughts. She turned to see Jackson Reed, the auction manager, a stern man with weathered skin and cold eyes. "Pregnant mare, past her prime. Previous owner ran her too hard before realizing she was with foal. Temperamental now, won't let anyone near her. We're just hoping someone takes her for meat." Emma's heart constricted at his callous words. "For meat?" she whispered, horror washing over her. Jackson shrugged, unmoved. "That's the horse business, girl. Not everything's a fairy tale. This mare's just taking up space. If no one bids, she'll go to the slaughterhouse by the end of the week." As he walked away, Emma felt something break inside her. She approached the mare's stall slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. The horse raised her head slightly, nostrils flaring as she assessed this new human. There was fear in those large brown eyes, but something else too, a wariness born of betrayal, of hands that had once been gentle turning cruel. "Hello, beautiful," Emma whispered. "My name's Emma." The mare snorted softly, pawing at the ground with one hoof. Emma stood quietly, just watching. After a few minutes, she began to talk, her voice low and soothing. "I know what it's like when no one wants you. My mom left when I was 7. Just packed up and decided she didn't want to be a mother anymore." She laughed softly, without humor. "Dad tries, but most days he's too tired from work or too deep in a bottle to remember I exist." The mare's ears twitched forward, listening. "I'm sorry they've treated you this way," Emma continued. "You deserve better. Your baby deserves better." Slowly, Emma extended her hand, palm flat, offering it to the mare to smell. The horse hesitated, then stretched her neck forward, nostrils fluttering as she took in Emma's scent. Her breath was warm against Emma's skin. "That's it," Emma encouraged. "I won't hurt you." For 20 minutes, Emma stood there talking to the mare about everything and nothing. School, her dreams of someday having her own ranch, the secret spot by the creek where she went when life became too much. And with each passing minute, the mare seemed to relax a little more, her eyes growing softer. When Emma finally reached out to stroke the mare's neck, the horse didn't pull away. Her coat was rough with neglect, but beneath the dirt and tangles, Emma could feel the strength in her muscles, the life that still pulsed through her. "I wish I could save you," Emma whispered, tears pricking at her eyes. But I don't have any money. I don't even have a place to keep you." The irony wasn't lost on her. Two unwanted souls connecting in the shadow of an auction that valued only profit and performance. As the sun began to set and the auction's first day drew to a close, Emma reluctantly said goodbye to the mare, promising to return tomorrow. But as she walked away, her heart felt heavier with each step. What could one penniless girl do against the harsh realities of the world? That night, sleep eluded Emma. She tossed and turned, haunted by the image of the mare's eyes, by the knowledge of what awaited her if no one placed a bid. When dawn finally broke, Emma made a decision. It was reckless, possibly even stupid, but she couldn't stand by and do nothing. She crept out of the small trailer she shared with her father, taking care not to wake him as he snored on the worn-out couch, an empty whiskey bottle on the floor beside him. From her hiding place beneath a loose floorboard, she retrieved a small tin containing every dollar she had saved over the past 3 years, money from odd jobs, from the small crafts she sold at the local market, from the coins she sometimes found in the washing machine. It wasn't much, just $212.75, but it was everything she had. The auction was already in full swing when Emma arrived, breathless from running the 2 miles from her home. She pushed her way through the crowd, ignoring the curious glances and occasional glares from the adults around her. The mare's lot number was 47, and they were already on 39. Emma's palms were sweating as she clutched her money tightly in her hand. When the chestnut mare was finally led into the auction ring, Emma's heart sank. The horse looked even more defeated in the harsh morning light, her movements sluggish, her head bowed. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Next up, lot 47, 5-year-old chestnut mare, registered name Sunset's Promise. In foal, due in approximately 3 months. Some temperament issues, sold as is. Can we start the bidding at $500? Silence fell over the crowd. No hands raised, no voices called out. "All right, let's be realistic. $300 for this mare. She's got good bloodlines despite her condition." Still no response. The auctioneer sighed audibly. "200? Folks, we're talking about 2 horses for the price of 1 here." Emma held her breath, clutching her money so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She couldn't bear to watch this proud animal being reduced to a bargain no one wanted. As the silence stretched on, something inside Emma snapped. Before she could think better of it, she raised her hand. $212.75, she called out, her voice cracking slightly. All heads turned to look at the small, determined girl with the trembling voice and the handful of crumpled bills. The auctioneer blinked in surprise, his rhythmic patter momentarily halted. The crowd turned to stare at Emma, some with amusement, others with curiosity. She felt her face flush hot with embarrassment but kept her hand firmly raised, her eyes fixed on the mare. "We have a bid of $212.75, the auctioneer finally announced, an undercurrent of laughter in his voice. "Do I hear $250? Emma held her breath, her heart hammering in her chest. "Please," she silently begged, "please let no one else bid." The mare seemed to sense something happening, her ears pricking forward as she gazed at Emma across the auction ring. $212.75 going once." A murmur rippled through the crowd. A few of the wealthier ranchers exchanged glances, but no one raised their hand. The mare wasn't worth the trouble to them, a risky investment with an uncertain foal and behavioral issues. Some shook their heads, others simply looked bored. Going twice. Emma felt dizzy with anticipation, clutching her money so tightly that her nails dug into her palm. "Sold to the young lady in the back for $212.75. A rush of emotions, relief, disbelief, terror, washed over Emma. She had done it. She had actually bought a horse. A pregnant horse. A horse she had nowhere to keep, no way to feed, and no idea how to care for. The reality of her impulsive decision crashed down on her, but when she looked at the mare, her mare now, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. As Emma approached the payment office with her handful of crumpled bills and loose change, she felt the stares of the other auction-goers. She heard their whispers too. Poor thing has no idea what she's gotten herself into. That mare's a waste of good pasture. Wonder how long before her daddy makes her sell it. Emma set her jaw and kept walking. Let them talk. They didn't understand, couldn't understand the connection she'd felt with the mare. Jackson Reed was waiting at the payment counter, his expression a mixture of irritation and concern. "You're Frank Thompson's girl, aren't you?" he asked as Emma carefully counted out her life savings. "Does your father know about this?" Emma avoided his gaze. "I'm old enough to make my own decisions." Jackson sighed. "Look, kid, I admire what you're trying to do here, but that mare needs proper care. She needs a vet, special feed, a safe place to foal. This isn't some stray cat you can hide in your bedroom." "I know that," Emma replied, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'll figure it out." Jackson looked like he wanted to say more, but instead shook his head and handed her the paperwork. "She's your responsibility now. For both your sakes, I hope you know what you're doing." As Emma signed her name on the bill of sale, her handwriting shaky but determined, a tall figure appeared at her side. She looked up to see Matthew Carter, owner of the sprawling Carter Ranch that bordered Willow Creek. His weathered face was unreadable as he studied the papers in Emma's hands. "You're Frank's daughter," he said. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded, suddenly intimidated. Matthew Carter was a legend in their small town, a third-generation rancher with the largest horse breeding operation in the county. Her father had worked for him briefly years ago before an argument had soured their relationship. "That mare you bought, she's got Hanoverian bloodlines, good ones." He said this matter-of-factly, no hint of warmth in his voice. Her previous owner ran her in jumping competitions until he noticed she was pregnant, pushed her too hard, ruined her trust in people. Emma swallowed hard. "How do you know all that?" "It's my business to know horses," he replied simply. Then, after a pause, "Where are you planning to keep her?" The question Emma had been dreading. She stared down at her boots, now completely out of money and out of bravado. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "Our trailer doesn't have land. I thought maybe, I'm not sure what I thought." Matthew studied her for a long moment, his expression impossible to read. Then he pulled a business card from his pocket and scribbled something on the back. "My ranch has an empty stall in the east barn, not being used right now." He handed her the card. "Bring her there by sundown. We'll discuss terms then." Before Emma could respond, before she could even process what had just happened, Matthew Carter turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Jackson Reed let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned," he murmured. "Matt Carter doesn't do favors for just anyone." Emma stared at the card in her hand, stunned. The address of Carter Ranch was printed on the front, and on the back, in a tight, precise handwriting, "East Barn, Stall 12. Ask for Sarah." "Is this for real?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jackson nodded. "Seems so. Though I'd get moving if I were you. Matt Carter isn't known for his patience." An hour later, Emma stood beside her mare outside the auction grounds, reality settling heavily on her shoulders. The horse was officially hers, the paperwork had been processed, her money taken, and now she held a lead rope attached to a halter that seemed far too tight for the mare's delicate head. "It's just you and me now," Emma said softly, reaching up to stroke the mare's neck. The horse shifted nervously, still wary of human touch, but didn't pull away. Progress, however small. The Carter Ranch was 5 miles away, too far for Emma to walk the mare in her condition. She chewed her lip, wondering how she was going to manage this, when a beat-up pickup truck pulled up beside her. The window rolled down to reveal Sarah, the Carter Ranch's head trainer, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "You Thompson's kid?" she asked bluntly. Emma nodded. "Matt called. Said you'd need help transporting a pregnant mare." Sarah glanced at the horse and her eyebrows rose slightly. "She's in worse shape than I expected. Can she load into a trailer?" I don't know," Emma admitted. Sarah sighed and got out of the truck. "Let's find out then." To Emma's surprise, Sarah didn't immediately approach the mare. Instead, she stood quietly a few feet away, observing. "What's her name?" she asked after a moment. "Sunset's Promise," Emma replied, "but I think I'll call her Promise." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Good name. Fitting." She took a step closer to the mare, her movements slow and deliberate. Promise tensed but didn't retreat. "She's been mistreated, but she's not broken, that's something." With gentle patience Emma hadn't expected, Sarah showed her how to approach Promise from the side, how to speak to her in a calm, steady voice, how to lead her toward the small trailer attached to the pickup. When Promise balked at the trailer's entrance, Sarah didn't force her. Instead, she stepped back, gave the mare space, and then tried again. It took nearly 45 minutes, but eventually Promise stepped hesitantly into the trailer, her body trembling with fear. Emma's heart ached at the sight. "You did good," Sarah said, securing the trailer door. "Both of you." As they drove toward Carter Ranch, Emma sat in tense silence, listening to the occasional shift and stamp of Promise's hooves in the trailer behind them. Her mind raced with questions. Why was Matthew Carter helping her? What would her father say when he found out? And most importantly, how was she going to care for a pregnant mare with no money, no experience, and nowhere to keep her? "Mr. Carter doesn't do this sort of thing," Emma finally said. "Help people, I mean." Sarah's mouth twitched into what might have been a smile. "You'd be surprised," she replied. "Matt Carter has his reasons, always does." As the truck turned onto the long driveway leading to Carter Ranch, Emma caught her first glimpse of the place that would become Promise's temporary home, and perhaps, though she hardly dared hope, the beginning of something more for both of them. Carter Ranch sprawled across the rolling hills like something from a dream, at least to Emma's eyes. Pristine white fences bordered lush green pastures where horses grazed peacefully. The main house stood proud on a gentle rise, its weathered stone facade speaking of generations of history. But it was the stables that took Emma's breath away. 3 massive barn structures meticulously maintained with gleaming copper weather vanes spinning lazily in the afternoon breeze. As Sarah's truck rumbled down the gravel drive toward the easternmost barn, Emma pressed her face against the window, drinking in every detail. This place was everything she'd ever dreamed of, everything she'd sketched in her tattered notebooks late at night when her father's snores filled their cramped trailer. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Sarah glanced at her, something softening in her expression. "It is. Matt's grandfather built the original barn with his own hands. Matt's added to it over the years, but he's kept the heart of the place intact." They pulled up beside the east barn and Sarah cut the engine. "This is where we keep the mares due to foal. More privacy, less stress." She nodded toward the trailer. "Let's get your girl settled." Unloading Promise proved easier than loading her had been. The mare seemed to sense that this place was different from the auction grounds, her nostrils flaring as she took in the scents of fresh hay, clean shavings, and other horses. Emma led her slowly into the cool dimness of the barn, marveling at how quiet it was despite housing at least a dozen horses. "Stall 12 is down at the end," Sarah directed, grabbing a halter and lead rope from a hook by the door. "It's our largest stall with an attached paddock she can access during the day." As they walked, Several stable hands paused in their work to watch curiously. Emma felt their eyes on her, heard their whispered questions, but kept her focus on Promise. The mare's ears swiveled nervously, her steps hesitant on the unfamiliar flooring. "It's okay, girl," Emma murmured. "We're safe here." When they reached stall 12, Emma caught her breath. It was nearly twice the size of the regular stalls, deeply bedded with fresh straw, with a small door at the back leading to a private paddock. A water trough gleamed in one corner, and a hay rack had been filled with sweet-smelling timothy. This must be expensive," Emma said, suddenly anxious. "I don't know if I can afford—" "Matt said to get you settled first," Sarah interrupted. "You'll discuss terms with him later?" Emma bit her lip but nodded. Whatever the cost, she would find a way to pay it. She had to, for Promise. As Sarah showed her how to remove Promise's halter safely inside the stall, a deep voice called from the barn entrance. "So this is what all the fuss is about." Emma turned to see Matthew Carter himself striding down the aisle, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the straw-covered floor. Up close, he was even more intimidating, broad-shouldered and stern-faced, with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to look straight through her. "Mr. Carter," Emma said, straightening her spine though her heart hammered in her chest, "thank you for letting us stay. I promise I'll work out a way to pay." He held up a hand, silencing her. His attention had shifted to Promise, who stood tensely in the corner of the stall, watching the newcomer with wary eyes. "Sarah's filled me in. Auction purchase, previous owner ran her into the ground in foal and terrified of people." His voice was matter-of-fact, not unkind, but not particularly warm either. "What made you think you could help her?" The question caught Emma off guard. It wasn't accusatory, merely curious, but she found herself struggling to articulate an answer that wouldn't sound childish or naive. "I don't know that I can," she finally said, choosing honesty. But no one else was even willing to try. They were going to send her to slaughter, and her baby with her. It wasn't right. Matthew studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slightly, as if confirming something to himself. "Your father works for Donovan over at Meadowbrook, doesn't he?" Emma's stomach tightened. "Yes, sir. Has for 3 years now." "Does he know where you are? What you've done?" She looked down at her boots. "Not yet." Matthew sighed, exchanging a glance with Sarah. "You need to tell him. Today." "I will," Emma promised, though dread pooled in her stomach at the thought. Her father wouldn't understand. He'd see it as just another problem, another burden in a life already overflowing with them. "In the meantime," Matthew continued, "that mare needs a vet check, proper nutrition, and someone to work with her daily to regain her trust." He fixed Emma with a penetrating look. "Are you prepared for that commitment?" "Yes, sir," Emma answered without hesitation. "I'll be here every day after school. Weekends, too." "School doesn't start for another month," Sarah pointed out. "Summer break." "Then I'll be here all day, every day," Emma declared. "I'll do whatever it takes." A flicker of what might have been approval crossed Matthew's face, but it was gone so quickly, Emma thought she might have imagined it. "Sarah will show you what needs to be done," he said. "The vet's coming tomorrow at 9 for routine checkups. We'll have her look at your mare then." "Her name is Promise," Emma said softly. Matthew raised an eyebrow. "Promise," he repeated, testing the name. "Fitting." He turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing, Emma. This is a working ranch, not a charity. Everyone here earns their keep. I expect you to do the same." "What do you mean?" Emma asked, confused. "It means you'll work for your mare's board. Sarah will assign your duties. Be here at 6 tomorrow morning." With that, he strode away, leaving Emma standing in the stall doorway, stunned by the turn her life had taken in a single day. Sarah chuckled softly. "Don't look so worried. Matt's bark is worse than his bite. Usually." "Why is he helping me?" Emma asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since the auction. "He doesn't even know me." Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. "Matt has his reasons. He doesn't do anything without purpose." She glanced at Promise, who had cautiously approached the hayrack. "Maybe he sees something in both of you." After Sarah left to attend to other duties, Emma stayed with Promise, giving the mare time to explore her new surroundings. Slowly, cautiously, she extended her hand, palm flat, the way she had at the auction. Promise sniffed it tentatively, then lowered her head slightly, allowing Emma to stroke her neck. "We did it, girl," Emma whispered. "We found you a safe place." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the barn windows, Emma knew she couldn't delay the inevitable any longer. She had to go home and face her father. "I'll be back first thing tomorrow," she promised, reluctantly leaving the stall. Promise watched her go, dark eyes following her movements as if wondering whether this human, unlike the others, would keep her word. Outside, Emma paused to take in the view of Carter Ranch once more, the peaceful pastures, the magnificent barns, the sense of belonging she'd felt the moment she'd arrived. For the first time in her life, she had something to fight for, something that was truly hers. Whatever her father said, whatever obstacles lay ahead, she would find a way to make this work. As she began the long walk home, Emma didn't know that Matthew Carter stood at his office window watching her leave. Nor did she know that his thoughts had drifted to another young girl from long ago, a girl with the same determination in her eyes, the same fierce love for a horse that no one else had wanted. "Just like her mother," he murmured to himself, before turning away from the window. The trailer was dark when Emma finally made it home, but the glow of the television flickered through the thin curtains. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come, and pushed open the door. Her father sat in his usual spot on the worn recliner, a half-empty beer can balanced on the armrest. Frank Thompson had once been a handsome man, strong and vibrant, but years of hard physical labor and harder drinking had carved deep lines into his face and bent his once straight shoulders. He glanced up as Emma entered, his bloodshot eyes narrowing. "Where you been all day?" he asked, his words slightly slurred. "Donovan's wife called. Said you didn't show up to clean their tack room like you promised." Emma winced. In the excitement of the auction, she'd completely forgotten her commitment to the Donovans. "I'm sorry, Dad. Something came up." Frank muted the television, his full attention now on his daughter. "Something more important than keeping your word? Than the $20 they were going to pay you?" Emma swallowed hard. It was now or never. "I bought a horse today." The silence that followed was deafening. Frank stared at her as if she'd announced she was moving to Mars. "You what?" "A horse," Emma repeated, her voice stronger now. "A mare. She's pregnant and they were going to send her to slaughter if no one bought her. I used my savings." Frank's expression shifted from confusion to anger, his face flushing red. "Have you lost your mind? Where exactly do you plan to keep this horse? How are you going to feed it, pay for the vet? We can barely keep ourselves fed." "I know, Dad, I've figured it out. Matthew Carter is letting me keep her at his ranch. I'm going to work off her board." At the mention of Matthew Carter, Frank went completely still. "Matthew Carter," he repeated, his voice suddenly cold. "And why would he do that?" Emma shook her head. "I don't know. He offered after I bought her at the auction. Said I could keep her in his east barn if I worked for her keep." Frank stood abruptly, swaying slightly before steadying himself. "You stay away from Carter and his ranch. That man can't be trusted." "But Dad..." "No." Frank's voice rose, echoing in the small trailer. "You're going back tomorrow and selling that horse. I don't care if you take a loss. Matthew Carter doesn't do favors without expecting something in return. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. I'm not selling her. She's mine, and I'm keeping her. She took a deep breath. I'll be at the ranch at 6 tomorrow morning. The vet's coming to check her. Frank stared at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. You're just like your mother, he said finally, his voice a mixture of anger and something that might have been grief. Stubborn, reckless, head in the clouds. The comparison to her mother, a woman who had abandoned them without a backward glance, stung more than Emma wanted to admit. I'm nothing like her, she whispered. No? Frank laughed bitterly. She had horse dreams too. Look where that got her. Look where it got us. He turned away, reaching for his beer. Do what you want. You will anyway. But don't come crying to me when it all falls apart. Emma retreated to her tiny bedroom, closing the door on her father's bitter words. She sank onto her bed, finally allowing the tears to fall. She hadn't expected his support, not really, but his dismissal still hurt. Worse was the comparison to her mother, a woman she barely remembered and had spent years trying not to become. She wiped her eyes, resolve hardening in her chest. She wasn't her mother. She wouldn't abandon her responsibilities. Promise needed her, and Emma wouldn't let her down, no matter what her father said about Matthew Carter or horse dreams or history repeating itself. The alarm clock read 4:30 a.m. when Emma silenced it the next morning. She dressed quickly in the semi-darkness, pulling on her most presentable jeans and a faded blue flannel shirt. Her father's bedroom door remained closed as she slipped out of the trailer, the first pale light of dawn just beginning to streak the eastern sky. The walk to Carter Ranch took almost an hour, but Emma didn't mind. The quiet morning gave her time to clear her head, to push aside her father's warnings and focus on the day ahead. By the time she reached the long driveway leading to the ranch, the sun had cleared the horizon, painting the sprawling property in golden light. Sarah was already in the east barn when Emma arrived, checking water buckets and dispensing morning medications to the horses that needed them. She nodded in greeting, her expression neutral but not unwelcoming. You're early, she observed. Good. We've got a lot to cover before Dr. Mitchell arrives. For the next 2 hours, Sarah showed Emma the morning routine, how to properly muck a stall, the correct proportions for feed, how to check for signs of colic or discomfort. Emma absorbed every detail, asking questions and taking mental notes. This was her chance to prove herself, to show that she belonged here despite her father's doubts. When they reached Promise's stall, Emma's heart lifted. The mare looked better already, her posture more relaxed, her coat less dull after just one night of proper care. She still retreated to the corner when they entered, but her ears remained forward, curious rather than fearful. She ate all her dinner, Sarah noted with approval. That's a good sign. Emma approached slowly, speaking softly to Promise as she had the day before. To her delight, the mare took a hesitant step toward her, nostrils flaring as she recognized Emma's scent. She remembers me, Emma whispered, joy bubbling in her chest. Horses don't forget, Sarah replied. Not the good, not the bad. At 9 o'clock sharp, Dr. Mitchell arrived, a brisk, no-nonsense woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands. She greeted Sarah warmly before turning her attention to Emma. So you're the girl who rescued our pregnant lady, she said, sizing Emma up. Brave choice. Impulsive, more like, Sarah commented, but there was a hint of approval in her voice. Dr. Mitchell laughed. The best decisions often are. She set down her medical bag. Let's have a look at your mare. The examination was slow and careful, with Dr. Mitchell explaining each step to Emma. Promise was understandably nervous, but with Emma's gentle words and soothing touches, she tolerated the unfamiliar handling better than expected. She's undernourished, but not critically so. Dr. Mitchell concluded after a thorough examination. The foal seems healthy, active. I'd estimate she's about 6 months along, which means you've got around 3 months to prepare for a new arrival. She scribbled notes in a file. I want her on a special feed regimen, more protein and minerals, and gentle exercise. Walking, not riding. Emma nodded, mentally calculating what this would mean for her work schedule at the ranch. More hours, certainly, to earn enough for the special feed and upcoming veterinary care. We'll take care of her, she promised. Dr. Mitchell smiled. I believe you will. She packed up her supplies. I'll be back in 2 weeks to check her progress. As the vet left to examine other horses, Emma remained with Promise, gently stroking her neck. The mare had begun to lean slightly into her touch, the barest whisper of trust, but enough to make Emma's heart soar. You're doing so well, she murmured. We both are. She didn't notice Matthew Carter watching from the doorway until he spoke. Dr. Mitchell says your mare's prognosis is good. His voice was neutral, giving away nothing of his thoughts. She'll need special care. Emma turned, meeting his gaze steadily. I'll work extra hours, whatever it takes. Matthew studied her for a moment, then nodded. Sarah says you're a quick learner. That's good. He paused, seeming to debate whether to say more. Finally, he asked, Your father know you're here? Emma stiffened. He knows. He's not happy about it. Frank never did approve of horses, Matthew said cryptically, or the people who love them. Before Emma could ask what he meant, Matthew turned to leave. Sarah will show you the rest of your duties. Don't let me down, Emma. As he walked away, Emma was left with more questions than answers, and the growing sense that there was much more to Matthew Carter's interest in her and promise than simple charity. Days melted into weeks as July blazed across the countryside. Emma fell into a rhythm at Carter Ranch, arriving each morning before sunrise and leaving well after sunset. Her routine was exhausting but fulfilling, mucking stalls, hauling hay, scrubbing water troughs, and helping the stable hands with whatever needed doing. But the best hours were those she spent with Promise. Every day, the mare showed small signs of improvement. She no longer retreated to the corner when Emma entered her stall. She would approach for treats, her soft lips delicately taking sliced apples from Emma's palm. And most precious of all, she had begun to nicker softly when she heard Emma's voice, a sound that made Emma's heart swell with pride and affection. You're making remarkable progress, Dr. Mitchell commented during her follow-up visit. Both of you. Emma beamed at the praise as the vet examined Promise, who now stood calmly for her checkup. The mare's coat had begun to regain its luster. Her eyes were brighter, and her swollen belly had grown noticeably larger. She's gained almost 100 pounds, Dr. Mitchell noted with satisfaction. The foal is developing nicely. Another 8 to 10 weeks, I'd say, before you'll be welcoming a new arrival. The thought of Promise's foal both excited and terrified Emma. What if something went wrong? What if Promise rejected the foal? What if Emma couldn't handle the responsibility of not one but 2 horses? Dr. Mitchell seemed to read her thoughts. Don't worry. Horses have been having babies without our help for thousands of years, and you've got a whole ranch of experienced hands to call on when the time comes. That was true, Emma acknowledged. Over the weeks, she'd gradually earned the respect of the stable hands and trainers who had initially regarded her with skepticism. They'd seen her dedication, her willingness to tackle the dirtiest jobs without complaint, her genuine love for Promise. Now they offered advice, shared their knowledge, even saved her a place at the lunch table in the staff break room. All except Matthew Carter, who remained an enigma. He appeared occasionally to observe her work or check on Promise, but their conversations were brief and formal. Emma could sense him evaluating her, measuring her against some standard she didn't understand. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression that seemed almost wistful, but it vanished the moment she noticed. On a sweltering afternoon in late July, Emma was walking Promise in the shaded paddock behind the east barn. The mare needed gentle exercise, and these daily walks had become a cherished ritual for both of them. As they circled the paddock, Emma spoke softly to Promise about everything and nothing: school starting in a few weeks, her worries about leaving Promise alone during those hours, her father's continuing silent disapproval. "He still won't even ask about you," Emma confided, stroking Promise's neck as they walked. "It's like he's waiting for me to fail so he can say, 'I told you so.'" Promise flicked an ear back, listening as she always did to Emma's voice. "The thing is," Emma continued, "I don't understand why he hates horses so much, or why he and Mr. Carter can't stand each other. Everyone says they used to be friends back before I was born." "They were more than friends," a voice said, startling Emma so badly that she nearly dropped Promise's lead rope. "They were like brothers once." Emma turned to find Sarah leaning against the paddock fence, her expression thoughtful. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," the trainer said. "Just came to tell you that Matt wants to see you in his office when you're done here." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Was she in trouble? Had she done something wrong? "Don't look so worried," Sarah said with a small smile. "If Matt was unhappy with your work, you'd know it by now." Emma nodded, trying to calm her nerves, but curiosity overrode her anxiety. "What did you mean they were like brothers?" Sarah sighed, looking briefly conflicted before making a decision. "It's not really my story to tell, but your father worked here, did you know that? Not just as a hand, but as Matt's right-hand man. They built this place together, in a way." Emma stared at her in disbelief. "My dad? But he's always worked for other people. Smaller ranches." "Not always." Sarah's eyes held a distant look, as if seeing into the past. "They had big plans, those two, going to turn Carter Ranch into the premier breeding facility in 3 states. And they might have done it too if..." "If what?" Emma prompted when Sarah trailed off. The trainer shook her head. "Like I said, not my story, but it involved your mother, a champion mare, and choices that can't be undone." She straightened, her tone becoming brisk again. "Finish up with Promise, then head to the main house. Matt doesn't like to be kept waiting." As Sarah walked away, Emma's mind whirled with questions. Her mother, a champion mare. What possible connection could there be between her mother's abandonment, her father's bitterness, and Matthew Carter's inexplicable interest in a penniless girl and her rescue horse? Promise nudged Emma's shoulder gently, bringing her back to the present. "Sorry, girl," Emma murmured, resuming their walk. "Seems like there's a lot more to this story than I thought." After returning Promise to her stall with fresh water and a flake of hay, Emma made her way nervously to the main house. She had never been inside before. All her work had been confined to the barns and pastures. The house was imposing up close, a sprawling 2-story structure of stone and timber that spoke of old money and older traditions. Emma knocked tentatively on the heavy front door. It swung open almost immediately, revealing a middle-aged woman with salt and pepper hair and sharp, assessing eyes. "You must be Emma," she said. "I'm Eleanor, Mr. Carter's housekeeper. He's expecting you in his study. This way." Emma followed Eleanor through a grand entryway and down a hallway lined with photographs. Horses mostly, magnificent animals captured in moments of power and grace. But one photograph made her pause. It showed 2 young men standing beside a gleaming chestnut mare with a white blaze. One was unmistakably a younger Matthew Carter, and the other... "Is that my father?" Emma whispered, staring at the smiling young man who bore little resemblance to the bitter, defeated figure who occupied their trailer. Eleanor followed her gaze. "Frank Thompson," she confirmed, And that's Marigold's promise, the mare that put this ranch on the map. A shadow crossed her face. Such a shame. What happened? Before Emma could ask what she meant, Matthew's voice called from down the hall. "Is that Emma? Send her in, Eleanor." The housekeeper ushered Emma to a doorway and then discreetly retreated. Emma took a deep breath and stepped into Matthew Carter's study. The room was exactly what she would have expected, masculine and traditional, with leather furniture, bookcases filled with equestrian texts, and more photographs of horses. Matthew sat behind a large desk, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed some paperwork. "Sit down," he said without looking up, gesturing to a chair across from him. Emma perched on the edge of the seat, hands folded in her lap, heart hammering. Was he going to tell her she couldn't keep promise at the ranch anymore? Had her father said something to him? Matthew finally set aside his papers and removed his glasses, fixing Emma with a direct look. "Your mare is doing well," he said. "Dr. Mitchell thinks she'll foal without complications." "Yes, sir," Emma replied, relief washing through her. "She's doing much better." "And you?" Matthew asked unexpectedly. "How are you doing, Emma?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm fine, sir." Matthew leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You've been working from dawn till dusk for weeks now. The hands tell me you're the first to arrive, last to leave. That kind of dedication is rare in someone your age." Emma wasn't sure how to respond. Was he complimenting her or criticizing her? "I've been watching you with that mare," Matthew continued. "You have a gift, a natural way with horses, especially the troubled ones." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "It reminds me of someone I used to know." The air in the room suddenly felt charged with unspoken meaning, and Emma found herself holding her breath, waiting for whatever would come next. Matthew opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a worn leather photo album. His fingers, calloused from years of ranch work despite his wealth, moved with reverence as he turned the pages. Finally, he stopped and rotated the album so Emma could see. "Your mother," he said simply. Emma leaned forward, her breath catching. The photograph showed a young woman with Emma's honey blonde hair and determined chin, sitting astride a magnificent chestnut mare that looked strikingly similar to Promise. The woman, her mother, was laughing, her face alive with joy as she leaned forward to pat the horse's neck. She looked so happy, so free, so different from the shadowy memory Emma carried of a tense, restless woman who couldn't wait to leave. "That's Marigold's Promise," Matthew continued, tapping the mare in the photo. "Your mother's horse, one of the finest jumping prospects I ever bred." Emma's mind reeled. "My mother had a horse. Here?" Matthew nodded, his expression softening with remembrance. "Catherine was my head trainer before Sarah. She had a way with horses that couldn't be taught. They responded to her instinctively, trusted her completely." His eyes met Emma's. "Just like your Promise trusts you." "But I don't understand," Emma said, struggling to reconcile this new information with everything she thought she knew. If she loved horses so much, why would she leave? Why would Dad hate them now? Matthew closed the album carefully, as if closing a chapter too painful to revisit. "That's a complicated story, Emma. One that's not entirely mine to tell." He sighed. "What I can tell you is that your mother faced a choice, a difficult one, and she made the decision she thought was right at the time." Emma's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. For years she'd tried not to think about her mother, had tried to bury the hurt of abandonment beneath anger and indifference. But now, seeing her mother's face alight with the same passion Emma felt for Promise, old wounds reopened. Did she ever? Emma hesitated, unsure if she wanted to know the answer. Did she ever try to come back? A shadow crossed Matthew's face. "Once," he said quietly. About a year after she left, your father refused to see her. The revelation hit Emma like a physical blow. All these years, she'd believed her mother had simply walked away without a backward glance, too selfish to care about the daughter and husband she'd left behind. But what if there was more to the story? What if her father's bitterness had kept them apart? Before Emma could ask more questions, Matthew straightened in his chair, his tone becoming businesslike again. The reason I called you here today, Emma, is to make you a proposal. Your work ethic has impressed everyone on the ranch, and your natural ability with horses, particularly troubled ones, is remarkable. Emma blinked, trying to shift mental gears from the revelation about her mother to whatever Matthew was about to say. When school starts in August, you won't be able to work full days anymore, he continued, but Promise will still need care and her foal will come not long after. I'd like to offer you a formal part-time position here, weekday afternoons and weekends. In exchange, Promise's board will be covered, along with standard veterinary care for her and the foal. Emma stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You mean a real job, with a salary and everything? A modest one, Matthew clarified with the hint of a smile. But yes, and once Promise's foal is weaned, we can discuss the possibility of training both of them for eventual competition, if that interests you. Competition, Emma repeated, her mind spinning with possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. Like jumping, dressage. We'll see what they're suited for, Matthew said. But first things first, Promise needs to deliver a healthy foal, and you need to finish your education. He fixed her with a stern look. That's non-negotiable. Your grades must remain good or our arrangement ends. Understood? Yes, sir, Emma replied immediately. I promise. I won't let you down. Matthew nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good. Now, there's one more thing. He hesitated, an unusual uncertainty crossing his features. Your father. Will he object to this arrangement? Emma thought about her father, about the bitter shell of a man who bore so little resemblance to the smiling young man in the photograph with Matthew. He won't like it, she admitted, but I don't think he'll stop me. I see. Matthew's expression was unreadable. Well, the offer stands regardless. You've earned it, Emma. As she left the main house a few minutes later, Emma's emotions were in turmoil. Joy at Matthew's offer warred with confusion about her mother, heard about her father's deception, and a lingering sense that she was only seeing pieces of a much larger puzzle. She headed straight to Promise's stall, needing the mare's steady presence to center herself. Promise greeted her with a soft nicker, extending her head over the stall door in welcome. Emma stroked the white blaze that ran down her face, so similar to the marking on Marigold's Promise in that old photograph. Was it a coincidence, she wondered aloud, looking into Promise's intelligent eyes? Or did something draw me to you? Something I can't even explain? Promise huffed softly, as if to say the reason didn't matter, only that they had found each other. Emma rested her forehead against the mare's neck, drawing comfort from her solid warmth. I'm going to give you the best life, she whispered. You and your baby both. August brought sweltering heat and the start of a new school year. Emma adjusted to her new routine, mornings at school, afternoons and weekends at Carter Ranch. Her classmates noticed the change in her almost immediately. The quiet, withdrawn girl, who had always faded into the background, now walked the hallways with quiet confidence, her mind focused on bigger things than high school drama. What happened to you over the summer? Her lab partner, Zach, asked one day. You seem different. Emma thought about Promise, about the foal growing inside her, about Matthew's offer, and the photograph of her mother. I found something worth fighting for, she said simply. Her father remained a distant figure in her life, leaving for work before she woke and often drinking himself to sleep before she returned home. On the rare occasions they occupied the same space, he asked no questions about Promise or Carter Ranch, and Emma volunteered no information. The silence between them grew deeper, filled with unspoken truths and festering hurts. At the ranch, however, Emma found the family she'd always craved. Sarah took her under her wing, teaching her the finer points of horsemanship and sharing stories of her own journey in the equestrian world. The stable hands included her in their jokes and traditions, no longer seeing her as an outsider but as one of their own. Even Eleanor, Matthew's stern housekeeper, began leaving homemade cookies in the break room on days when Emma worked late. Promise continued to blossom under Emma's care. By early September, she had transformed from the frightened, mistreated mare at the auction into a healthy, bright-eyed mother-to-be. Her pregnancy advanced normally, her belly now distinctly swollen with new life. She allowed Emma to touch her freely, even welcomed the gentle examinations Dr. Mitchell performed during her bi-weekly visits. "Any day now," the vet said during her late September checkup. "All the signs are there. Softening around the tail, waxing of the teats, restlessness. I'd say within the week, if not sooner." Emma nodded, excitement and anxiety churning in her stomach. She had read every book in the ranch library about foaling, had watched countless videos, had pestered Sarah and the other hands with questions. She was as prepared as she could be, but still, the enormity of what was coming left her breathless. "Will you be here when it happens?" she asked Dr. Mitchell. The vet smiled kindly. "I'll come if needed, but most mares foal just fine on their own. The night watch will alert you if anything begins, and you can call me if there are complications." That night, Emma stayed late at the ranch, reluctant to leave Promise when the birth seemed so imminent. She sat on a hay bale outside the stall, watching as the mare paced restlessly, then lay down, then got up again. "First-time mothers get nervous too," Sarah commented, bringing Emma a cup of hot chocolate. "But she'll know what to do when the time comes. It's instinct." Emma nodded, though she couldn't help worrying. "I just want everything to be perfect for her. After everything she's been through, she deserves that much." Sarah squeezed her shoulder gently. "You've given her a second chance, Emma. Whatever happens next, remember that." As Emma finally headed home under a canopy of stars, she felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if something momentous waited just beyond the horizon. Not just Promise's foal, but a shift in her own life. A turning point she couldn't yet see but could somehow sense approaching. The call came at 2:17 a.m., jolting Emma from a fitful sleep. She fumbled for her phone in the darkness, her heart leaping into her throat when she saw the ranch's number on the screen. "Emma, it's Sarah. Promise is in labor." Those 5 words sent Emma scrambling out of bed, pulling on jeans and boots over her pajamas, her fingers clumsy with urgency. She scribbled a hasty note for her father, though she doubted he'd notice her absence before morning, and slipped out into the cool September night. The 2-mile journey to Carter Ranch had never felt so long. Emma ran until her lungs burned, then walked briskly until she caught her breath, then ran again. By the time she reached the east barn, her legs were trembling, and sweat plastered her hair to her forehead despite the autumn chill. Sarah met her at the barn entrance, her normally composed features tight with concern. "Her water broke about 40 minutes ago, but things aren't progressing as quickly as I'd like. The foal's position might be off." Fear clutched at Emma's heart as she followed Sarah to Promise's stall. Inside, the mare was lying on her side in the thick straw, her flanks heaving with contractions. Her eyes rolled white with pain and fear, and her coat was dark with sweat. One of the night watchmen stood nearby, monitoring her vital signs and speaking to her in low, soothing tones. "Promise," Emma whispered, dropping to her knees beside the mare's head. Promise's ears flicked toward her voice, and some of the panic seemed to leave her eyes. "I'm here, girl. You're not alone." Dr. Mitchell arrived 15 minutes later, her face grim as she assessed the situation. "The foal's leg is bent back," she announced after a careful examination. "That's why she's not progressing. We need to reposition it before the next contraction." What followed was the most harrowing hour of Emma's life. She knelt by Promise's head, stroking her neck and murmuring encouragement while Dr. Mitchell and Sarah worked to adjust the foal's position. Promise's body shuddered with pain, her eyes pleading with Emma for relief, for understanding, for help that Emma felt powerless to give. "Stay with me," Emma begged, tears streaming down her face. "Don't give up. Please, Promise, fight for your baby." As if understanding, Promise gave a mighty heave, and Dr. Mitchell cried out in triumph. "That's it. The leg's in position. Next contraction, she should be able to push the foal out." Emma held her breath as Promise gathered her strength for one final effort. With a guttural groan, the mare pushed, and suddenly there it was. Tiny hooves emerging, then slender legs, a delicate muzzle, and finally, in a rush of fluid and motion, the entire foal slid into the world. "It's a filly," Dr. Mitchell announced, quickly clearing the newborn's airways and rubbing her vigorously with clean towels. "And she looks perfect." For a moment, the tiny creature lay motionless and Emma's heart seemed to stop. Then the filly twitched, raised her head, and took her first shuddering breath. A collective sigh of relief filled the stall. Promise, exhausted but alert, twisted around to see her baby. The tender way she nuzzled the wet, trembling foal brought fresh tears to Emma's eyes. Life, in all its messy, miraculous glory, had triumphed against the odds, just as it had that day at the auction when Emma had raised her hand and changed two destinies forever. "She's beautiful," Emma whispered, watching as the filly attempted to coordinate her impossibly long legs. The newborn was a rich bay with a perfect white star between her eyes, not quite her mother's marking, but distinctive in its own right. "What will you name her?" Sarah asked, her voice soft with wonder. Emma thought for a moment, watching as Promise cleaned her new daughter with gentle, methodical licks. "Second Chance," she decided. "We'll call her Chance." As dawn broke over Carter Ranch, word of the new arrival spread quickly. Stable hands and trainers stopped by throughout the morning to admire the filly, who was already nursing strongly and experimenting with wobbly steps around the stall. Promise watched over her protectively, but seemed to understand that these visitors meant no harm to her precious baby. Matthew Carter arrived mid-morning, his stoic expression softening at the sight of the new mother and foal. "Well done, Emma," he said, genuine approval warming his voice. "Not many would have stayed through such a difficult birth." "I couldn't leave her," Emma replied simply. Matthew nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's what separates true horsemen from the rest, being there when it matters most, no matter how hard it gets." He studied the filly with an expert's eye. She has good conformation, strong legs, nice slope to the shoulder. With proper training, she could be something special. The implications of his words sent a thrill through Emma. "You think she could compete someday?" "With the right guidance? Absolutely." Matthew's gaze shifted from the foal to Emma, something like pride in his expression. "I think both of you might surprise everyone with what you can accomplish." That afternoon, exhausted but elated, Emma finally headed home to shower and change before returning for the evening feeding. She was so wrapped up in thoughts of Promise and Chance that she didn't immediately notice her father's truck in the driveway, unusual for a weekday afternoon. She found him sitting at their small kitchen table staring at a bottle of whiskey. The seal was unbroken, which surprised Emma almost as much as his presence. "Dad, aren't you supposed to be at work?" Frank Thompson looked up, his bloodshot eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. "Got a call last night from Matthew Carter." His voice was rough but steady. "Said you were at his ranch, helping a mare give birth." Emma tensed, waiting for the anger, the accusations, the bitter words she had come to expect whenever Carter's name was mentioned. He said you saved them both, the mare and her foal. Frank's fingers tapped restlessly against the whiskey bottle. Said you have a gift, just like your mother. The comparison hung in the air between them, but this time there was no venom in it, only a heavy sadness that made Emma's chest ache. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "About Mom, about her working at Carter Ranch, about Marigold's promise." Frank's shoulders slumped. What good would it have done? That life is gone. She's gone. "But I'm still here," Emma said, a lifetime of hurt and confusion surfacing. "And I deserve to know the truth. Not just that she left, but why." Her father was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on some distant point only he could see. "It wasn't as simple as her choosing horses over us, if that's what you're thinking." He drew a deep breath. "There was an accident, a bad one. Marigold's promise was injured during a competition, broke her leg. Catherine wanted to try surgery, expensive rehabilitation. I said no, that we couldn't afford it, that the humane thing was to put the horse down." Emma felt a chill run through her, thinking of Promise at the auction, unwanted and destined for slaughter. "What happened?" "Matt sided with your mother, offered to pay for everything." Bitterness crept into Frank's voice. "But I'd already given the order. By the time Catherine found out, it was too late. The mare was gone." He passed a hand over his face. "She never forgave me, or herself for not being there. She left a month later." The revelation settled over Emma like a heavy blanket. All these years, she had carried the weight of abandonment, believing herself insufficient, unworthy of her mother's love. But now she understood it had never been about her at all. It had been about grief, guilt, and a broken trust that couldn't be mended. And when she tried to come back, Emma pressed, remembering what Matthew had told her. Frank's expression tightened. "I was angry, proud, told her she'd made her choice." He looked up at Emma, really seeing her perhaps for the first time in years. "I never thought you'd end up just like her, that the horses would call to you too." In his eyes, Emma saw fear, fear that history was repeating itself, that he would lose her just as he had lost Catherine. And beneath the fear, a love so tangled with pain that he had nearly strangled it. "I'm not her, Dad," Emma said gently, "and I'm not going anywhere. But Promise and Chance are part of my life now. I need you to accept that." Frank stared at the unopened whiskey bottle for a long moment, then pushed it away. "I don't know if I can," he admitted, "but I'm tired of fighting ghosts." He looked up at his daughter, a tentative olive branch in his next words. "This filly of yours, what's she like?" Emma's face lit up at her father's question, the tension between them momentarily forgotten. "She's perfect, Dad. Bay coat with a white star on her forehead. Long legs like a racehorse, but built more for jumping, Dr. Mitchell thinks. And she's brave. Tried to stand up less than an hour after she was born." A ghost of a smile touched Frank's lips. "Sounds like her grandmother." "Marigold's promise?" Emma asked, seizing the opening. Frank nodded, his gaze distant. "That mare had heart like I've never seen. Would jump anything Catherine pointed her at, no matter how impossible it looked." He hesitated, then added quietly, "You have her picture, you know, your mother's, in that box of baby things in your closet." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "I do?" "Your mother left it for you. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, even after—" He trailed off, clearing his throat. "Maybe it's time you had it." That evening, after checking on Promise and Chance one last time, Emma sat cross-legged on her bed with a dusty shoebox she'd never paid much attention to. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, she found a silver frame containing a photograph she'd never seen, her mother holding infant Emma, both of them beside Marigold's promise. On the back, in elegant handwriting, was a message, "For my Emma. May you find the same joy and freedom I found with horses. All my love, Mom." Tears blurred Emma's vision as she traced her mother's words. For 15 years, she had believed herself abandoned, forgotten. Now she understood that her mother had left something of herself behind. Not just this photograph, but a legacy, a passion that had somehow found its way into Emma's blood, despite Frank's attempts to sever that connection. The next morning, Emma arrived at Carter Ranch earlier than usual, the silver-framed photograph tucked carefully in her backpack. Promise greeted her with a soft nicker, while Chance, already more coordinated than the day before, pranced around her mother with boundless energy. "You're looking at the future jumping champion of Carter Ranch," Sarah commented, leaning on the stall door beside Emma. "Matt's already talking about her training schedule. Says she's got the same look in her eye that Marigold had." Emma smiled, watching the filly's antics. "I can't believe how quickly she's bonding with everyone. Promise was so afraid of people when I found her, but Chance just seems to assume everyone's her friend." "That's because she's never known cruelty," Sarah said. "Thanks to you, she was born into a world where humans are kind and trustworthy." She gave Emma an appraising look. "Matt wants to see you, by the way. Said to come by his office when you arrive." Emma found Matthew in the main barn rather than his office, watching as one of the trainers worked with a young stallion in the indoor arena. He acknowledged her with a nod, his attention never leaving the horse's movements. "Beautiful colt," Emma commented, following his gaze. "Promising," Matthew agreed, "but too easily distracted. Needs a firmer hand." He turned to face her fully. "Your father called me this morning." Emma tensed. After their conversation yesterday, she wasn't sure what to expect. "What did he say?" "He asked if I was serious about training you." A hint of amusement touched Matthew's eyes. "Wanted to know if I thought you had real potential, or if I was just being charitable." "And what did you tell him?" Emma asked, her heart in her throat. "I told him the truth, that you have more natural talent than I've seen in 20 years. Matthew's gaze was steady, serious. "I also told him about the Carter Ranch scholarship." Emma blinked in confusion. "The what?" "A full ride to college for a promising young rider, along with continued training and board for their horse." Matthew gestured for her to follow him as he walked toward his office. "I established it years ago, but haven't awarded it recently. The recipient needs to show not just riding ability, but character, work ethic, and genuine compassion for horses." Emma's mind whirled as she tried to process what he was saying. "But I don't even have a horse to ride. Promise isn't trained for..." Promise was a competition horse before her previous owner mistreated her. Matthew interrupted. "With time and patience, she could compete again. And in a few years, Chance will be ready for training too." He stopped walking and faced her directly. "Your mother was going to be the first recipient of that scholarship, Emma. Before the accident, before everything fell apart." The revelation hit Emma like a physical blow. "My mother?" Matthew nodded, his expression solemn. "Catherine had everything it took to go professional. Olympic potential even. The scholarship would have paid for her equine science degree while she trained with me." His voice softened. "Your father wasn't wrong about everything. Horses are an expensive world, one that's often closed to people without means. I wanted to open that door for Catherine. But then Marigold's Promise was injured," Emma said, the pieces falling into place. "Yes." Matthew's face darkened with old grief. "I was away at a competition. Frank made the call without consulting me, without waiting for Catherine to return. By the time I got back, it was too late." He sighed heavily. "I blamed him. Catherine blamed him. But most of all, Catherine blamed herself for not being there when Marigold needed her." They reached his office, and Matthew unlocked the door. Inside, he went to a cabinet and withdrew a dusty trophy with a tarnished nameplate. Mare Gold's Promise and Catherine Adams, regional champions. "Your mother asked me to keep this for her," he said, handing it to Emma. "Said she couldn't bear to look at it anymore, knowing she'd failed Marigold in the end." Emma held the trophy reverently, imagining her mother's hands polishing it, her pride as she accepted it. "She didn't fail," Emma said softly. "Not really. Marigold's legacy lives on in promise and chance." Matthew studied her thoughtfully. "You know, I wondered if that was why you chose that mare at the auction. Some unconscious recognition, perhaps." "I didn't know anything about my mother's past then," Emma reminded him. "No, but blood calls to blood, they say." Matthew's expression grew distant. "When I saw you with that mare, a pregnant, frightened animal no one else wanted, you looked so much like Catherine that for a moment I thought time had folded back on itself." He shook his head as if to clear it. "I couldn't save Marigold. I couldn't keep your family together. But I could give you and Promise a chance." Emma felt tears pricking at her eyes. "Why didn't you ever tell my father about the scholarship after Mom left?" "I tried. He wouldn't take my calls." Matthew's voice held no recrimination, just weary acceptance. "Pride is a powerful thing, Emma. It can make a man reject help even when he's drowning." A knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah appeared, her usual composure replaced by visible concern. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation with Promise. She's agitated, won't let anyone near the foal. We've cleared the barn, but she's still distressed." Emma's heart lurched. "What happened?" "Not sure. One of the new hands tried to enter the stall without permission, startled her badly." Without waiting for Matthew's dismissal, Emma rushed from the office, the trophy still clutched in her hands. She ran to the east barn, her mind racing with fear. Promise had come so far, had begun to trust humans again. What if this incident set her back to square one? She found the east barn eerily quiet, the usual bustle of activity replaced by tense silence. Promise's distressed nickering echoed from her stall. As Emma approached, she could see the mare pacing agitatedly, positioning herself protectively between the stall door and Chance, who huddled in the corner, looking confused by her mother's behavior. "Hey, girl," Emma called softly, setting the trophy down and approaching the stall with deliberate slowness. "It's just me. You're safe. Chance is safe." Promise's ears swiveled toward Emma's voice, but her eyes remained wide with fear, her nostrils flared. She snorted a warning when Emma reached for the stall door. "Careful," Sarah cautioned from a respectful distance. She tried to kick the new hand, nearly got him too. Emma nodded but didn't back away. "Promise," she said again, keeping her voice steady and calm. "I need you to trust me. Remember how far we've come?" The mare's frantic movements slowed slightly as she recognized Emma, but the fear in her eyes remained. Whatever had happened had triggered memories of past mistreatment, reawakening her defensive instincts. Taking a deep breath, Emma unlatched the stall door and slipped inside, closing it behind her. Promise's muscles tensed, and for a heart-stopping moment, Emma thought the mare might charge. Instead, Promise froze, trembling slightly, caught between fear and the trust they had built over months of patient care. "I know you're scared," Emma murmured, keeping her movements slow and predictable as she extended her hand. "But I would never let anyone hurt you or Chance. Your family now." Behind her, Emma was vaguely aware of others gathering to watch. Sarah, the stable hands, even Matthew, but her focus remained entirely on Promise and the fragile bond between them that now hung in the balance. Time seemed to slow as Emma stood before Promise in the straw-covered stall, her hand extended, her breath shallow. Outside, the gathered ranch hands fell silent, the only sounds the soft nickering of Chance and Promise's anxious breathing. Emma was acutely aware that one wrong move could undo months of patient trust building, or worse, result in serious injury. "Emma?" Sarah's voice was taut with concern. "Maybe you should—" "She's okay," Emma interrupted without taking her eyes off Promise. "She just needs to remember that she's safe here." Promise's ears flicked back and forth, her eyes still wide with the memory of fear, but she hadn't retreated further. Emma took this as a positive sign. With painstaking slowness, she took one step forward, then another. Promise snorted in warning but held her ground. "That's it," Emma murmured. "It's just me, your friend, remember?" She began to speak in a low, rhythmic voice, telling Promise about the photograph her father had given her, about her mother's trophy, about the strange ways fate had brought them together. The actual words mattered less than their cadence, the soothing continuity of sound that seemed to wash over the frightened mare like gentle waves. Gradually, Promise's breathing slowed. Her ears, which had been pinned back in distress, relaxed into a more neutral position. The wild look in her eyes began to fade, replaced by cautious recognition. "Good girl," Emma encouraged, close enough now to smell Promise's distinctive scent, sweet hay and warm horse. "That's my brave girl." When she was within arm's reach, Emma stopped, allowing Promise to make the final decision. For a long, breathless moment, neither moved. Then, with a soft exhale that seemed to release weeks of tension, Promise lowered her head and nudged Emma's shoulder gently. Something broke open in Emma's chest, a flood of emotion so powerful she could barely remain standing. Without thinking, she wrapped her arms around Promise's neck, burying her face in the mare's warm coat. Promise didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, she leaned into the embrace, her body relaxing completely for perhaps the first time since Emma had found her at the auction. "I love you," Emma whispered, words she had thought but never spoken aloud. "You're my family now, you and Chance both." Outside the stall, a murmur of astonishment rippled through the onlookers. Even the most experienced hands had never seen a frightened mare calm so quickly, trust so completely. Sarah caught Matthew's eye across the barn aisle, her expression saying what words couldn't. "This girl is special." For Emma, the world had narrowed to this single moment. The solid warmth of Promise against her, the mare's heartbeat steady beneath her hands, Chance's curious approach as she sensed the danger had passed. In Promise's surrender to trust, Emma felt an answering surrender in herself, old hurts and fears dissolving in the pure connection between them. She didn't know how long they stood like that, locked in their silent communion. It might have been minutes or hours. She became aware of the outside world again only when a familiar voice cut through the hushed atmosphere of the barn. "Emma?" She turned, arms still around Promise's neck, to see her father standing at the stall door. Frank Thompson looked painfully out of place among the ranch hands in his worn work clothes and scuffed boots, his expression a complex mixture of concern, wonder, and something that might have been regret. "Dad?" Emma's voice came out as a surprised squeak. "What are you doing here?" Frank shifted uncomfortably under the curious stares of the Carter Ranch staff. "Matthew called, said there was trouble with your mare." His eyes moved from Emma to Promise, widening slightly as he took in the mare's condition and the small foal peering out from behind her. "Said you might need support." The words seemed to cost him something to say, as if admitting that Emma might need him and that he wanted to be there for her was a concession he'd fought against making. Emma felt Promise tense slightly at the newcomer's voice, but the mare remained calm, trusting Emma's lack of alarm. "It's okay," she told her father. "Promise was scared, but she's better now." Frank nodded, his gaze lingering on the way. Promise leaned into his daughter's touch, the easy confidence with which Emma handled the powerful animal. She trusts you, he said, a note of wonder in his voice. We trust each other, Emma corrected gently. A heavy silence fell between them, filled with years of misunderstanding and hurt. Then Frank cleared his throat. Your mother would be proud, he said, the words emerging rough and unpracticed. Seeing you like this. Tears sprang to Emma's eyes at the unexpected acknowledgement. Do you really think so? I know so. Frank's gaze dropped to the ground, then lifted again with visible effort. She had that same way with horses, that same connection. He gestured vaguely toward Emma and Promise. They responded to her like they do to you, like they understand each other. The comparison to her mother, once wielded as a criticism, now felt like the highest compliment. Emma stroked Promise's neck, drawing strength from the mare's solid presence. I wish I could have seen her with horses. I wish I could remember. Frank's expression softened with old grief. You were so young when she left, but sometimes watching you grow up, I'd see flashes of her in you. Same determination, same heart. He swallowed hard. That's why I kept you away from horses. I was afraid. Afraid I'd leave too? Emma finished when he trailed off. Her father nodded, shame and honesty mingling in his face. Stupid, I know, but losing Catherine broke something in me. The thought of losing you, too. He shook his head, unable to complete the thought. Dad, Emma said softly, I'm not going anywhere. The simple reassurance seemed to release some long-held tension in Frank. His shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in years, Emma caught a glimpse of the young man from the photograph, the one who had built Carter Ranch alongside Matthew, who had loved a skilled horsewoman named Catherine, who had dreamed of a future now long buried. Matthew stepped forward then, breaking the intimate moment between father and daughter. Frank, he acknowledged, his tone careful but not unfriendly. It's been a while. Frank straightened, wariness returning to his posture. Matthew. The two men regarded each other across years of estrangement, neither willing to be the first to extend a hand, yet neither turning away. Progress of a sort, Emma thought. Your daughter has quite a gift, Matthew said finally. Reminds me of someone else I used to know. A flicker of something, pride perhaps, crossed Frank's face. So I've heard. He glanced at Emma, then back to Matthew. She mentioned a scholarship. Matthew nodded. The offer stands. College tuition, training, board for her horses. Horses, plural. Promise and Chance, Matthew clarified. The mare and foal. Emma has a natural eye for their potential, just as Catherine did for Marigold. At the mention of Marigold's promise, Frank flinched visibly, but instead of the bitter anger Emma expected, he merely nodded. And if she accepts? Then she'll have a future in this world, if that's what she wants, Matthew said, a real shot at making something of her talent. Frank was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving from Matthew to Emma, to Promise, and the curious foal who had edged closer to investigate this new human. When he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. I won't stand in her way. Not this time. The simple declaration hung in the air, weighted with meaning beyond the mere words. Emma felt tears threatening again as she recognized what her father was really saying. I won't make the same mistake twice. I won't let my fear cost you your dreams the way it cost your mother hers. As if sensing the importance of the moment, Promise stepped forward, bringing Emma with her, and extended her muzzle toward Frank. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement, an offering of possibility. Frank hesitated, then slowly raised his hand, allowing Promise to catch his scent. Hello there, he said awkwardly. I'm Emma's dad. The mare's nostrils flared as she assessed him. Then, to everyone's surprise, she gave a soft nicker, the same greeting she now offered Emma each morning. Well, I'll be damned, Sarah murmured from nearby. She's welcoming him to the family. 1 year later, the East Barn at Carter Ranch hummed with pre-competition energy. Riders in polished boots and pristine show coats led gleaming horses through the aisle, last-minute grooming tools clutched in nervous hands. The Spring Showcase was Carter Ranch's biggest annual event, drawing competitors and spectators from 3 states to witness the debut of promising young horses and riders. In Stall 12, the same stall where Promise had given birth to Chance, Emma adjusted the braided mane of the now sleek and confident chestnut mare. Promise stood calmly under her ministrations, a far cry from the frightened, emaciated horse Emma had saved from slaughter. Her coat gleamed with health, her eyes bright with intelligence and trust. "There," Emma said, stepping back to admire her work. "You look beautiful." "She certainly does," Sarah agreed, approaching with Promise's show bridle draped over her arm. "Hard to believe she's the same horse you brought here last summer." Emma smiled, running a hand along Promise's neck. She was always beautiful. She just needed someone to see it. In the adjacent stall, Chance, now a leggy yearling with her mother's intelligence and an extra dose of curiosity, watched the proceedings with keen interest. Though still too young for competition, she wore a special halter for the day, ready for her official presentation as Carter Ranch's newest prospect. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, handing Emma the bridle. Emma took a deep breath. "Terrified," she admitted, "but excited too. Promise has worked so hard for this. We both have." Their entry in today's competition was more than just a debut. It was a statement. A rescue mare once deemed worthless, competing alongside pedigreed warm bloods worth tens of thousands of dollars. Even if they didn't place, simply entering the ring would be a victory. "You know," Sarah said, watching as Emma bridled Promise with gentle efficiency, "when you showed up at that auction with nothing but pocket change and determination, I thought Matt was crazy to take you on." She smiled, genuine affection in her eyes. "I've never been happier to be proven wrong." Emma laughed, touched by the admission. "Well, I thought you were terrifying when we first met, so I guess we're even." 20 minutes, Emma," called one of the stable hands. "They're starting the intermediate division soon." Nerves fluttered in Emma's stomach as she led Promise from the stall and toward the warm-up ring. This was it. All those dawn practice sessions, all those hours studying jumping techniques and dressage principles, all leading to this moment. She was so focused on the path ahead that she almost missed the familiar figure leaning against the fence, her father, looking uncomfortable but determined in a freshly pressed shirt and his least worn jeans. "Dad," Emma's face lit up with surprise. "I didn't think you'd make it. Didn't you have that job in Middleton today?" Frank shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Rescheduled. Told them my daughter's big day only comes once." He studied Promise with genuine admiration. "She looks good, Emma. Ready?" "We are," Emma said, warmth spreading through her chest at her father's presence. Over the past year, their relationship had slowly mended. Not perfect, not always easy, but real in a way it hadn't been since she was a child. Frank still struggled with the ghosts of the past, still had his dark days, but he was trying. He'd even started visiting the ranch occasionally, watching Emma's lessons from a distance that gradually shortened with each visit. "Your mother would be proud," Frank said quietly, the words no longer painful for either of them. "I am too." Emma blinked back sudden tears. "Thanks, Dad." A few yards away, Matthew Carter observed the exchange from beside the warm-up ring, his weathered face softening slightly. Though he and Frank maintained a careful distance, the bitter animosity had faded into something approaching civil acknowledgement. They would never recapture the brotherhood of their youth, but for Emma's sake, they had found a fragile peace. "Emma, good, you're here." Matthew approached, clipboard in hand. "They've moved your division up. You'll go 5th instead of 8th. He glanced at Frank, nodding briefly. "Frank?" "Matthew." Frank returned the nod, then turned back to Emma. "I should find my seat. Good luck out there." He hesitated, then awkwardly patted Promise's neck before heading toward the spectator stands. Emma led Promise to the mounting block, her heart racing. This was their moment, hers and Promise's, but she couldn't help thinking of all the threads of fate and choice that had brought them here. Her impulsive bid at the auction, Matthew's unexpected offer, her father's grudging acceptance turning gradually to support, and her mother's legacy, a gift she hadn't known was hers to claim. As if reading her thoughts, Matthew spoke. Catherine used to get the same look before competing, focused but a million miles away at the same time. Emma smiled, adjusting her helmet strap. "Sarah says I overthink everything." "It's not a bad quality in a rider," Matthew replied, "as long as you trust your instincts when it counts." He handed her a small object, a worn ribbon, faded from blue to almost gray with age. "Your mother won this on Marigold's Promise, in her first competition. I thought you might want to carry it today." Emma took the ribbon reverently, tucking it into her jacket pocket close to her heart. "Thank you," she whispered. Matthew nodded, his usual stoicism momentarily softened. "Remember what we practiced. Steady rhythm, soft hands, eyes up. Promise knows her job, trust her to do it." As Emma guided Promise into the warm-up ring, a sense of rightness settled over her. Whatever happened in the competition, she had already won something far more valuable, a place where she belonged, a connection to her past, and a future full of possibilities. Promise seemed to sense her rider's calm confidence, moving with fluid grace as they circled the ring. Ears pricked forward, she gathered herself beneath Emma, eager but controlled, a partner rather than merely a mount. "That's it," Emma murmured, feeling the powerful muscles shift beneath her. "We've got this, girl." From the stands, Frank watched his daughter with a complex mixture of emotions. Pride, certainly. Emma sat the horse with natural ease, her back straight, her hands steady. But also a wistful recognition of what might have been, had he made different choices all those years ago. Beside him, an empty seat marked where Catherine should have been. He'd finally written to her last month, a halting letter full of long overdue apologies and news of Emma's accomplishments. He didn't know if she would respond, didn't know if that wound could ever truly heal. But the letter had been sent, and with it, another piece of the past had been laid to rest. In the arena, the announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Next in the intermediate jumper division, number 47, Emma Thompson riding Sunset's Promise." As Emma guided Promise through the entrance gate, a hush fell over the spectators. The story of the rescue mare and the determined girl who saved her had spread throughout the equestrian community. More than a few skeptical smiles had greeted their entry in the competition, but as Promise stepped into the arena, head high, movements collected and purposeful, those smiles faded into expressions of surprise and reassessment. This was no charity case, no sentimental project. This was a partnership forged through perseverance, trust, and love, a testament to second chances and the power of believing in something when no one else would. Emma took a deep breath, centering herself as she and Promise circled the arena once before approaching the first jump. The course ahead was challenging, 8 fences of increasing difficulty designed to test both technical skill and courage. But as she felt Promise gather beneath her, ears focused forward on the first fence, Emma knew with bone-deep certainty that they were ready. Whatever came next, today, tomorrow, in the years ahead, they would face it together, the poor girl and the pregnant mare who had changed each other's destinies forever. With a soft squeeze of her legs, Emma gave Promise the signal, and together they soared toward the future.